Madam Speaker. It's an honor for me to rise today in the chamber.
Hear, hear.
Thank you to my colleagues for the warm welcome. And I'd like to thank my esteemed colleague from Halliburton, Kawartha Lakes Brock, for being so generous as to share his time with me today, and to be able to give me the opportunity to share some of the concerns I have, some of the economic concerns that we're seeing in the Kenora riding and across northwestern Ontario, and how I believe Bill C-8 does not adequately address some of those concerns, Madam Speaker, and I'm looking forward to providing some thoughts and some suggestions to the government members on ways that we can move forward. Obviously, Madam Speaker, there's no question that across the country we're facing a number of serious economic concerns, and not the least of which is the cost of living right now, with inflation rising at record rates. Something that the Parliamentary Budget Officer has confirmed is a result of government spending, is driven by government spending. It's something that we're quite concerned about on this side of the aisle. That's why our party has continually been pushing for and proposing that the government looks to cut back on its spending, that it phases out stimulus programs as things reopen, as we push for our economy to reopen sooner, and especially because, as I mentioned as well, the Parliamentary Budget Officer has stated that the rationale for this stimulus spending no longer exists. So it's high time that we get things back on track, and we're looking for some leadership from the government to do just that. Because when you look at just everyday items, essential items, Madam Speaker, like pork, like beef, which is increasing at 12%, natural gas, which I believe is around 20%. Everyday essentials are getting more and more expensive. Now, these are things that were already more expensive for many in northwestern Ontario, many in my riding, and of course these added costs just make it that much more difficult. And the government policies around vaccine mandates, specifically the vaccine mandate put in place for transport truck drivers, is something that's going to have negative impacts on supply chains and only make this issue much worse for a number of items. I was talking recently, Madam Speaker, with Nevin Nelson from Nelson Granite, just outside Vermilion Bay, in my riding. This was one of his primary concerns. Not only concerned about the ability for Canadians to export goods into the country, but for him and his business being able to send his goods to the United States. He was very clear to me that this vaccine mandate put in place specifically for transport truck drivers is going to have a detrimental impact to his businesses and many others across northwestern Ontario. So, Madam Speaker, we've been very clear on this side of the House. We're continuing to push back against this policy. We're looking to find some reasonable solutions and middle ground so that we can ensure everyone is respected, we're keeping everyone safe, and we're putting COVID behind us once and for all. I've also had a number of conversations with folks from other regions of my riding. I saw some photos this week on social media from people at the Safeway in Kenora, where many shelves are empty when those are going grocery shopping and they're not able to get their essentials. I've had a constituent from Sioux Lookout, Knowles, share his heating bill with me, Madam Speaker, and Knowles is currently paying $70 a week in carbon tax alone, with an addition of about $100 HST on top of that. So you're looking at $170 a week just for his heating. And Madam Speaker, I don't know if you've spent much time in Sioux Lookout in the winter, but I know you are from Northern Ontario, so you understand full well that heating is definitely not a luxury. It is a necessity. In fact, in many parts of my riding last night, the wind chill dipped around minus 50. And this is quite evident that heating is necessary, and these added costs are just making things so much more difficult for people to get by. But it's not just home heating. Gasoline in cars as well is going up. It's making it more difficult for people to get to the hospital, for example. Many people in my riding have to drive a couple hours or more in order to access medical service, and having these added costs for gasoline, again, it's just making it more and more difficult. And that's why, Madam Speaker, when we're talking about inflation, our party has been clear that it is time to phase out stimulus programs and it is time to rein in government spending. But the government has been taking this position and sort of politicizing this position, saying that the Conservatives want to cut everything, that we don't want the government to spend anything. Well, of course, that's not the case. The government has to keep programs going, has to keep services going. What we're saying is the government needs to phase out the unnecessary stimulus programs and get things back on track and open up our economy. And Madam Speaker, I share a concern that was raised by my colleague from the NDP from Northern BC about the Northern Residence Deduction. So this government has brought forward a plan in C8 to address the Northern Residence Deduction by expanding the travel portion, but they've done nothing to address the base portion of that. Now, Madam Speaker, we ran in the last election on a plan to increase the Northern Residence Deduction, and that to me is an example of good spending, of efficient spending, of making sure that we're supporting those in the North, and it's something that I think my colleagues in the NDP would agree with. And that's something I hope the government will take into account. By some of the comments earlier that I heard in response to that question, the government could potentially be considering that. And Madam Speaker, another big issue, of course, is housing. Something that's not included in the CPI index, but the prices that we've seen have been increasing quite dramatically as well. And this is something that seems to be impacting everyone from all walks of life, from all income levels. In the Kenora riding, we're looking for more affordable housing. We're looking for housing for young people and people that are coming out of school, entering the workforce and looking to stay in the community. A lot of people that are my age, frankly, Madam Speaker, that can't find a place to live. But it's also working families, it's seniors. It's impacting everyone right across the district. And one of the biggest issues we see is that this government hasn't been providing incentives for people to develop. There are lots of lots, there are lots of pieces of land available in my riding, from Sioux Lookout to Ear Falls and everywhere in between. But some of the solutions that we've seen from the government and from some of the other parties in this House have only been focused on subsidizing demand and actually further driving a wedge into this issue and making it much worse, instead of focusing on the supply and increasing the housing stock. And on the same note, housing in First Nations specifically is something that we need to see addressed, whether it's the underfunding that we've seen from the government that's leading to overcrowding and mold and a number of issues. It's having a detrimental impact on many people in my riding, in the remote northern parts of my riding, Madam Speaker. In fact, a recent report, as I mentioned earlier this week in the House, a recent report that's been brought forward by the Canadian Medical Association, the Canadian Medical Association Journal rather, has shown that the issues in housing have actually led to worsened health outcomes in Indigenous children, Madam Speaker. So that's something that we've been hearing from chiefs for a number of years. We've been hearing from community residents in my riding, but yet the government has been slow to act. And the time is now for the government to act on that and ensure that we have stronger housing, we have better housing and better opportunities for the First Nations across the Kenora riding, Madam Speaker. Now, with my limited time, I'd just like to say briefly as well that the labor shortage is something that's obviously impacting many people across the Kenora riding. I looked at the job board in Dryden recently, and there's over 100 positions that are available, from minimum wage to well-paying jobs that require a lot of experience. And this is a small community, of course, with a number of vacancies, and many businesses haven't been able to hire, and haven't been able to find people to hire, and we really haven't seen a plan from the government on how to address that. So those are three big issues that I feel haven't been adequately addressed, and I hope in questions and comments I'll be able to share further some of the solutions and some of the suggestions that we can see going forward to ensure that Northwestern Ontario can thrive economically, and that we can chart a new path forward. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires? The honorable